Hi everybody, welcome back to the BCS Business Technology course. We have our week 4 content here right now, and we're going to be talking a little bit about tips and tricks within Excel and do some simple graphing. For the tips and tricks, some of the ones that we're going to go over have been already laid out a little bit in earlier content, just kind of interspersed throughout, but we wanted to take a week and talk specifically about those tips and tricks and a couple of other ones because within Excel, it can turn into really monotonous work. And if we can figure out a faster way to do even little things, it's going to end up saving us time in the long run. And Excel sometimes just isn't that intuitive, so we just want to cover a couple of these. If you go online, you'll be able to find tons of videos that will give you additional tips and tricks to these. If you have a question, I would highly recommend that you do little YouTube searches as you continue to learn about Excel. There's tons of resources online, but these are kind of our top 10 that we picked that we thought were the most useful. And then at the end, we're going to cover a little bit of simple graphing, just so we can make some visuals for any data that you may have. So like I said, starting with tips and tricks and then going to graphing, we'll go over tips and tricks right now. So our first one that we're going to talk about, I've gone over multiple times. I'm not even going to switch over into Excel to talk about it. It's Control Z or Command Z on Mac. This is your shortcut for the undo button. It will save you a lot of time if you learn to just use it when you make a little mistake. Control Z, Command Z, hit it once, you're right back to where you were before. You don't have to try and click on the perfect cell, delete it, or go delete just the right amount of text, or go change a number back to how it was. Control Z or Command Z will be your friend. It will help to speed up those little mistakes that just happen. 2 and 3 I'm going to talk about kind of together right now, using function keys for absolute references and the autofill handle. Little side note on the absolute references, if this is something that you're not really grasping or these videos aren't helping to explain it as well as you'd like I said, there's tons of resources online. Also, ask in person. One of the teachers will surely be able to kind of explain this in a way that will make sense. But we'll go over them a little bit right now. So 2 and 3, we'll talk about using the autofill handle a little bit right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and pretend that we're making some revenue projections for a company. So I'm going to say revenue. This is going to be in millions. So let's say it's 2024 right now. Let's say we have a company's 2023 numbers, and then we are going to project their 2024 numbers and on. Excel is smart enough to recognize the pattern that's happening here. They're just growing by 1. So if I go and I highlight both and then select the autofill handle and drag out, it will project what it thinks we're going to say. So it thinks that we want to go through these years, which we do. So that's kind of just a little example of how to use the autofill handle. Excel is pretty smart, so a lot of the times it's able to predict kind of what we're looking for. Autofill handle is one way to help you really quickly start to use Excel to not have to type everything in. I only had to type in 2 numbers to end up with all of these. So let's pretend that last year this company did $10 million in revenue. And we've done some research, and we think that for the next, this is just a super simple example, but let's say that we think from 2023 to 2029, we're going to grow at $5 million a year. So I'm just going to put our growth, revenue growth, our expected revenue growth, okay? We think it's going to grow $5 million every year. Now, there's different ways that you could do this if you were actually going to make projections. You could do a percentage, but just for the simplicity of understanding this, we're going to say 5. So for this year, we're going to start to make some cell references here. So I'm going to do an equal sign, and I'm going to do 10 million. That's our starting, and we think it's going to grow by 5. So that's going to give us our projection of 15 million that next year. So I should be able to take this autofill button and extend it over. But look, it's all 15. Why is that? Well, we know it's supposed to be growing, so it should go 15, 20, 25, 30, but it's all at 15. So let's click on it and see what's going on here. So if you look at what cells are being referenced, we have the 15 and then nothing here. Same, we have the 15 and then nothing. So what we want to do is use absolute references to make this work out. So we're going to double click here. Now let's think which absolute references make our reference kind of stick to a certain spot. So out of these two cells, which one do we want to stick? We want this 5 to stick. So what we're going to do is we're going to click in here, and the shortcut is that we can use the FN key and then hit F4, and it will actually already input the absolute cell references there. Now, in our case, we want it on the B and on the 4, these $signs, so that it holds exactly on this cell. Other cases, if you hit FN and F4 again, it will switch around, give you different options, but this case, we want this one. So I do that and hit enter. Now I'm going to go grab the autofill handle, drag it over, and this is now going up correctly by 5 million each year. So that's just kind of a quick overview again of how to use absolute references. The shortcut, once again, is the FN key and F4, and then how to use the autofill handle. I would, once again, I've said this in pretty much all the other videos, but I would open up an Excel spreadsheet on your own and try and do this on your own. It might take you a minute, maybe it'll be easy for some, but I would highly suggest doing this on your own. Now, let's go into how to navigate rows, how to navigate big sets of data, and I'm also going to include how to select big sets of data. So that's 4 and 5 right here. So this is just an example company. This is not a real company. These are not real financial statements. But I'm going to show you how, without clicking around, you can navigate quickly and select data quickly. So let's say I'm in here and I want to jump down to the bottom of this column here. Right here it says we use the control key, and so we're going to use the control key and up and down, left, right. I'm going to make sure I say this right for Mac and for PC users. So I'm going to click control, and for Mac it's command, and for PC and Windows it's control. So on Mac, I'm going to click command, and I'm holding command down right now, and then I'm going to click the down arrow, and that jumps me down to the bottom of this data. Jump up. If I hold the command key and click the left arrow, it will go over and kind of jumps you through the data. So you can navigate a little bit quicker that way. Now let's imagine that I have all of this data here and I want to select it. Similarly, I'm going to hold the shift and the command key, or if you're on PC or Windows, you're going to hold the shift and the control key, and then I'm going to push the right arrow and then down. And this is actually going to let me select data a lot quicker. If you select too much data, you can just let go of the command key. I'm only holding the shift down now, and this will allow you to move one row or one column at a time. So let's say I'm just holding shift and I'm clicking the right arrow, that takes me over one column at a time. If I'm holding shift only and then I click the up arrow, it lets me select or deselect one row at a time. So that is 4 and 5. We have talked about the auto sum button. I really think this is one that people need to recognize and make use of, because it can just take away some keystrokes and make things really fast and really easy. So I'm going to delete these total values that I have in here, and we'll go over this really quickly. So if I know that these two totals, all they are is a sum, I don't have to go through and type equals and type sum and then select each of these individually. That takes way too long. I'm trying to do this quick, so I'm going to go select all of these plus this bottom column, go up here to the auto sum button, click it, and that is going to give me a value there already. Now, if I want to be even faster, I don't even have to do it just one column at a time. I can select all of this data plus these two empty cells, click auto sum, and that's already going to come up with numbers there. I'm going to do it down here again one more time, auto sum, and one more time here. So I just was able to come up with all of those sums really quickly. Now, if I had to do each of those individually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and each time I'm selecting all the separate data that goes into each, you can see how over the course of a big document like this, that time's going to add up. So that's just a really quick shortcut that you can be able to use as auto sum. Now we're going to talk about 7 and 8, tracing precedence and tracing dependence. Now, sometimes we're doing calculations that require a bunch of different cells to be selected. Now, you may or may not know what WAC is, but this number right here is referred to as WAC. The only thing you need to know right now is that it takes a bunch of different data, a bunch of different cell references to get this number. Now, any number of those cells could be wrong, and I want to be able to look at each of them and identify where they're at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to click up here on the tabs, and I'm looking for trace precedence or trace dependence. Oh, and it's not letting me switch. No, here we go. So the trace precedence and trace dependence is on the formulas tab, and when you click formulas, it comes up with an updated ribbon that has these two buttons right here, trace precedence and trace dependence. Now, if I'm looking at this number, I know that it has a bunch of different cells that precede it. So if I click here and I click on precedence, it will show me all of the different cells marked with arrows and dots that it depends on. So if I want to remove those arrows, I can just click remove there. So all of those cells go into this cell. Now let's say if I, for example, I'm going through and I recognize that, oh, this number right here, this 4.75 is wrong. I know it's wrong, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's screwed up a bunch of different numbers within here, but I need to know which numbers are messed up. So I can go and I can click trace dependence, and it shows me, okay, this 4.75 is used in this calculation right here, and it's also used in this calculation right here. And there's a third arrow showing that it's used in this calculation right here. So by clicking trace dependence, I can see where is this number being used so that I can maybe go and troubleshoot a little bit quicker. Comes up with all those arrows. When I want to take them off, come up here, click remove arrows. There's a couple different options here depending on if you have, let's say I have dependence and precedence showing at the same time. So let me just do that really quick. And for example, oh, I only want to see the dependent arrows, so I remove the precedence, and now I'm seeing just the dependent arrows. I'm going to remove all of them, and we're going to keep going here. So that's those two. Those are just a way for you to troubleshoot what data could be wrong if you think some data is wrong and it's affecting some of the cells that it's referencing. You can use trace precedence and dependence quickly to identify that. And then we've covered this in other videos, but deleting rows and columns to clean up empty space. As we create financial models such as this one, we may be going through and thinking that we're going to need a lot more rows or columns than we actually end up needing. And we can clean up kind of some of this empty space here that you can see by deleting some rows or columns. In this case, it's rows. So if I want to get rid of one row at a time, I go up, I right click on it, and I can click delete, and that will take away one of those. If I want to delete multiple at a time, I select all of them, so click and drag across, then right click, I can click delete, and that helps me to clean up my data a little bit. It's not so spread out, and there's not just this empty space that is unnecessary there. Now we're going to talk a little bit about graphing. Selecting graphs, a lot of people may not have, experience with how to do this or what types of data work best with what types of graphs. I'm going to give you this YouTube video to go watch. I would highly suggest this if you're not confident in what type of graph you should select. Different types of data are best represented by certain types of graphs, and this YouTube video covers that. It explains it very clearly. So I'm going to give this to you as a resource. We're going to focus on just a couple of simple kinds of graphs, just 3 of them, being the column, or sometimes they're called bar charts, line graphs, and pie charts. Everyone's favorite is always the pie chart. It is often not the best way to represent your data, but a lot of people pick it. I put this note here: be sparing in your use of the pie chart. I would ask myself, would a column chart be better? It's talked about a little bit in this video, but pie charts they look good visually, but they're hard for us to really make any conclusions from by just looking at them. So I gave just a quick explanation. Column charts are used to compare multiple different categories of data. Line charts are used to see pretty much just one category over time, and then pie charts are just comparing parts of a whole. So once you watch that video and you have a little bit better of an idea of what graph you want, maybe all you needed was this to decide, you need to select the data that you want to show up on the graph. So we're going to cover here how to select the range of data that you want in the graph, how to then create the graph, and eventually how to select the chart and make it look good. So we're going to start with selecting the range of data you want in the graph. I'm actually going to use this example that we've been using thus far in the video. Sorry, let me just get this cleaned up here. I'm going to use just this super simple set of data that we've created in this video to create a line chart. Now, let me show you how I decided on a line chart. A line chart is used to see one category. Sorry, this should say category. Excuse me. This should say used to see one category of data over time. So the category in this case would be revenue, and it is over this 7-year span. So what it says is select the range of data that we want, and a little side note, I would normally suggest including the headers for any table that your data is in. In this case, the headers are this revenue and these years. So I'm going to go ahead and select all this data simply by clicking in the top left, dragging over. Now I have all that selected, and then it says select the insert tab. So I'm going to go up here to insert, and then I'm going to choose a chart. Now there's recommended charts that you can look at, and it is actually already recommending this line chart. You could also do a bar graph, but in this case we want to see the revenue over time. There's also all these different kinds of graphs right here. This is the bar charts or the column charts. This is the line, and this is the pie. These are the three that you'll use the most often. So we want a line chart, and we're going to just select this. I would honestly suggest that for the most part, until you get a little bit more comfortable with how to use different charting and graphing, that you only select whatever's in the top left here. So if you have a column, select this one. Maybe a 3D, but that's just for visuals. I just select this every time. We expect it to be a straight line because this is just growing at the same rate. We see that because we selected the years, the x-axis has been labeled in years, and the whole chart has been given this name, revenue. So Excel is pretty good generally at selecting chart headers and labeling the axes. Now we're going to talk a little bit about, we talked about this, selecting a chart. Once you have a chart, you can start to add and remove things that you want. So let's say that this was a chart in which I wanted to have a legend. Now, these buttons up here, anytime that I am making a chart, I just have to remind myself, these are my friends right here. People get messed up by starting to double click on this, trying to look through whatever's over here. Forget this right now as my biggest suggestion. Just focus on these three buttons up here. So I want to add something to the chart. I click add chart element. I want a legend. I want it to show up on the right side. Now I have a legend. It's super easy. Just stay away from double clicking here for now. Just go to add chart element, find which one you want, and then select it. So I'm going to go ahead and take this legend off here. Talked about that. I seriously cannot recommend this more. Just focus on these buttons here. Focus on change colors, focus on add chart element. This one we'll go over in a little bit. If we want to edit the name of the chart, you can double click here and go ahead and just delete it right away and call it whatever you want. We'll just rename it revenue for now. And then click off of it, and it is there. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about some formatting within graphing. This is a super simple look. It's just white. There's only color on this line. We do have the option to change the background. Now I'm going to go over this really quick. I know I said just forget this. I'm just going to cover it super simply. The only thing that you're going to find here is changing the background color. I wouldn't use it for anything more than that. You start messing with this, you're going to get frustrated. Everything's up here that you need. You can also change the text. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to white. You can do that. My suggestion would be, okay, I can just go up here and I can pick a color scheme that I think looks good. So for now, I'm going to change it to green. And then this little chart design has all of these different options for you to be able to use. So I can click that and it automatically puts it together for me. That looks great. Maybe I want a dark background. Maybe I want a light background. Maybe I want a green background. I would really suggest highly that you stick to these for the most part. As you get a little bit better, as you learn Excel, you'll be able to do a better job. You'll be able to make it look more specifically to how you want. But for now, this does an amazing job. If you want just grayscale, you want black and white, that's great. It will just make things super simple and help you to avoid headaches. And this is about tips and tricks and doing things simple right now. So talked about that, talked about these, and I think that is all for today.